Welcome back to Munro Live, everybody. Today we have a treat for you. We have Nick Shotka, who is our resident BMW driver at Munro and Associates. So Nick, can you tell us a little bit about your BMW, when you bought it, what you like about it, and then compare and contrast to the day that you spent with this?
Yeah, for sure. This is a 2010 BMW M3. I bought it personally back in 2019. I was just about a year into working for Munro at the time, and it's been on my list of cars that I've wanted to own for ever since I was a little kid. I bought it mostly based off just the uniqueness of this vehicle, as well as just the reputation that this car has as being like the embodiment of BMW as an ultimate driving machine. It's extremely unique in the fact that it's the only 3 Series, only compact BMW ever to have a V8 in it. It's a 4.4 liter V8 derived from the M5's V10, which is itself partly derived from a race engine, so it's extremely unique. And then just the overall balance of the vehicle, BMW did a really good job, and they're very famed for this vehicle in particular being extremely invigorating and engaging to drive, with extremely exceptional handling. It feels extremely planted, and that engine, which revs all the way up to 8,400 RPM, really brings this car alive when you are really pushing it. So those factors all together really wanted me to buy this, and I was able to find a good one to add to my collection.
And to add a little spice to this, so Nick and I both drive internal combustion engine vehicles. I drive a huge Yukon because I got a lot of kids and dogs and all sorts of stuff. You drive this vehicle because it's something you've always wanted to drive. But working at Munro and Associates, we see the shift to EVs coming. Some people have been able to transition pretty easily. I think Jordan, who's on the channel all the time, he bought a Model 3 recently. He loves it. Sandy drives a Rivian and a Model 3. But I think there's some of us that need to be convinced. I need more utilitarian size out of an EV that just doesn't exist yet. I think you're looking for more of that ultimate driving machine. So let's transition to the EV future. BMW dropped off this BMW i4 M50. It has this nice blue matte color, which is nice to pair right next to your 12-year-old beautiful M3. But you took this home. Now, what was your first impression of driving it?
My first impression was exciting. It really packs a punch. I've driven a couple electric cars. I will admit I'm not extremely versed in the very high performance ones. But this thing really packs a punch. We've got 2 motors, a combined output of 536 horsepower compared to 414 horsepower in my BMW. It's a big jump, especially when you consider that those are electric motors and that power is available instantaneously. I think that BMW advertises a 3.7 seconds 0 to 60. I can tell you it feels much faster than that. So it was extremely exciting to drive first off. But then a couple of things kind of crept into my mind as I was kind of pushing it where I could. Weight, number one, you definitely feel the weight. This car is 5,000 pounds, and that's just due to the fact that this is basically the BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe turned into an electric car, and BMW wasn't able to ground up optimize the body and the packaging and everything to the way that they wanted to. So you have almost over 1,000 pounds more compared to the standard 4 Series. And the other issue there is BMW really likes to advertise that they always like to get a 50-50 weight distribution, which is perfectly balanced for a vehicle. This unfortunately isn't. It's because you don't have the heavy engine and transmission in front, and the electric motor is obviously going to weigh a lot less than those. I believe the weight distribution is 48 in the front and 52% in the rear. This comes into effect on both hard acceleration and pretty high-speed cornering. Under hard acceleration, one thing that I noticed immediately was the amount of front-end lift that this vehicle has. The standard 4 Series obviously is going to have more weight on the front to keep it down, and I don't think there were many chassis architecture changes to add in a little bit more anti-squat and anti-lift in the geometry here. So you're kind of dealing with a lot of front-end lift under hard acceleration, perhaps a more aggressive rebound setting on the front shocks could have slowed that down. But I did notice that during our first couple of launches.
And Nick, what about the steering feel? I know yours is a hydraulic pump. This has got to be electric power steering.
Yep, exactly.
Did you notice anything peculiar there?
Yeah, it is a complaint that a lot of automotive journalists have had for BMW for some years now, starting with the generation of 3 and 4 Series previous to this, which is when BMW switched from a hydraulic steering, which I have here in the M3, to an electric power steering rack. The problem moving that is you lose a lot of feedback, just because there's so many electronic gates for it to go through. The steering becomes extremely numb. When I drive this car, I almost pretty much know exactly what the front wheels are doing when driving the car, and the steering is extremely quick on this vehicle as well. When it comes to electric power steering, you lose a lot of the steering feedback, and that is something, again, I noticed pretty directly, as well as a lot of slightly off-center vagueness as well. This thing is pretty direct when you turn the wheel because of its very quick steering ratio. This one has a little bit slower steering, but still pretty quick, but I did notice a good amount of off-center steering wheel vagueness that is going to come with your electric power steering system.
And anything else interior-wise, styling-wise? I see a lot of similarities in the headlight shape,
Yep.
but not the side or vents in the hood. Anything there?
So styling-wise, it's probably the most controversial vehicle that BMW has ever put out. I will say even more than the Bangle Butt 7 Series that came out in the early 2000s. Personally, I don't like it, and I still have not been convinced by these new kidney grills. BMW has always had a pretty distinctive kidney grille design. In the past few years, they have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The previous generation 7 Series was a big offender of huge ones, but they really, really stepped it up in size with the new 4 Series and M3 as well. To me, the new i4, I just can't get over. It looks like Rufus the Mole Rat from Kim Possible with those big buck teeth sticking out, and I can't get that sight out of my mind. And then just overall with the vehicle, I'm not really convinced. The fastback styling is nice, but it looks, especially around back, a little bit too generic for me, a little bit too Toyota, Lexus-like. And then there's just a couple little things here and there. Those little stick-on rear fender flares, I think, look pretty tacky. Obviously, that was to account for the increased track width that this vehicle has with the wider tires. But I think that's not a very clean-looking design. And then I'm just not super fascinated by the rear end styling here, and BMW enthusiasts will cry foul to note that the Hofmeister kink on the C-pillar has been pretty reduced as well. I think there's still some room to go here, styling-wise.
All right, so Nick, you're going to take this thing for a spin, give some of your feedback live as to some of the things you were talking about when you took it home earlier. But until then, you'll get back and we'll wrap this thing up.
All right, here we are in the i4 M50. I'm going to take this on a quick drive and give you some of my impressions on the driving experience and the road feel, and focusing on some points I mentioned earlier in the video. First, as just a quick, general overview of the interior. It seems nice on the surface. There's some good materials around here, everything you touch, a lot of carbon fiber, as I think this is a package for this vehicle specifically. But then you kind of dig into like a little bit more of the nooks and crannies of the interior, and you start to feel some not very nice hard plastics, especially up here, over by the B-pillar, down here going to the door sill. A lot of hard plastics, and even on the lower door trim, it's pretty hard here with only a slight bit of soft touch. Now, this would be fine in a $40,000 4 Series base model, but I think this vehicle is $82,000. I'm not really sure that I like this much use of not very high-end materials. Controls-wise, everything feels nice and sturdy, very BMW-ish, except for this volume knob. For some reason, this is where they cheaped out on the controls. This volume knob feels like it belongs in a Ford Focus, not in a BMW. But other than that, everything is pretty standard. So let's take it for a quick drive. I'm going to talk about a few things, like I said, that I mentioned earlier in the video. Out of the parking lot here. Again, we've had 2 motors in this vehicle. Surprisingly enough, both of them are brushed motors. That's a very rare thing to do in an electric vehicle. BMW has done a really good job of keeping out of the rare earth materials market for their motors, and they've been able to get 536 horsepower combined out of both of these motors to do so. So let's stop here, do a quick little launch. Let's see how she feels under full power. Make sure I'm in the right mode. Because there's a little boost part. And this is what you want to see the horsepower. All right, here we go. Launch control is easy. Left foot on the brake, right foot on the gas. Again, exciting. It's extremely exciting. The electric vehicle propulsion and instant torque still has not been lost on me in terms of its effectiveness to make your heart skip a beat and put butterflies in your stomach. A couple of quick points just from that launch right there. One, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of front end lift, surprisingly. Again, I think that's down to the fact that this is kind of just a converted internal combustion engine sedan. You don't have a heavy engine and transmission over the front wheels to keep the weight down over there. And also weight has shifted to the back in terms of weight distribution of this vehicle. 52% in the front, or excuse me, in the rear, 48% in the front. And because I'm assuming BMW didn't want to invest a huge amount in suspension architecture changes, this is kind of the results you get when you put this vehicle as an electric car. Maybe with the next generation of this vehicle, they will get that completely sorted out. I have to bet that that'll be on a completely bespoke architecture. But for now, this is kind of the consequences of that. The other thing is the noises that this vehicle makes. So I think I've heard that BMW consulted Hans Zimmer, the very famous composer, to do a lot of the propulsion sounds. In theory, that seems fine to me. It makes electric vehicles a little more exciting to drive, makes them a little bit more futuristic. However, the way that they were done in this vehicle, I'm not really sure about. It's very reminiscent of a failing wheel bearing, if you know what I'm talking about. That kind of noise, that's a low-pitched noise that increases in pitch with the speed of the vehicle. It kind of sounds like the propulsion noises are all 4 wheel bearings going bad in this vehicle. I'm not too sure about that. I think it's a little bit over the top. But other than that, I mean, it's a pleasure to drive. I've got this on this screen right here that shows you your power. As a car geek, I'm pretty sure if I owned this, I would just keep this on all the time, because you can just track exactly how much power and torque you're getting at any given moment, which is pretty fun to watch go up and down. Now, I drove this car a couple of days ago. Put it through a little bit more rigorous driving. In terms of dynamics, like I mentioned earlier, longitudinally it's exciting, but you really start to feel the extra weight when you put this thing through some hard corners, especially steady state cornering, where you're trying to decrease your radius. You do tend to dive into a lot of understeer with these electric vehicles, and it's no exception here. It's a little bit more toned down than other electric vehicles I've driven, but the understeer does creep in more of a way than I would expect the ICE version of this vehicle to as well. And even though we're running on, I believe, pretty sticky Pirelli P0 tires, you still get that kind of, you can't escape the weight in this vehicle. That extra 1,100 pounds really shines through in the not most flattering way. Now, again, BMW quoted a 3.7 second 0 to 60 time for this vehicle. I think that is vastly underrated. I would guess it's under 3.5 seconds at best. a lot of theories that I've heard in various reviews on that. The best one is that BMW is trying to protect the M3 and M4 because they have four-wheel drive now, and they go 0 to 60 in around 3.5 seconds. So similar to what Chevrolet will do with the Camaro and the Corvette, where the Camaro can never be faster than the Corvette, they're going to limit and or advertise this as being slower. But in terms of longitudinal speed, I think it's on par, if not faster, than the current M3. Laterally, dynamically, though, it's not there, and it won't be until that BMW is able to design this kind of electric vehicle from the ground up and get their chassis architecture and weight distribution bang on. So those are just some quick thoughts in terms of the dynamics of this vehicle while driving. Practicality is, standard for a four-door sedan of this size. Range in general, a lot of people have been complaining in this car of its range, especially with the package that this vehicle is equipped with. I believe we have the 20-inch wheels and the Pirelli tires bring the range down to around 240, 250 miles, down from 270 if you don't get that package, and down from 300 if you get the lower powered version of this vehicle. Now, and because there are other electric vehicles out there that produce such greater range with similar performance, i.e. the Model 3 and Y performance, and to an extent the Model S Plaid also, although that is extremely more expensive than this. I think people are kind of seeing the shortcomings that you get with just transforming an ICE vehicle into a battery vehicle. Once they bespoke design a battery vehicle of this nature from the ground up, you're going to probably see that range increase as well. Charging wise and living with it every day, I took it after I left work on Wednesday. I took it over by the Meijer, by our office to do some shopping and to charge it up. This can charge up to 200 kilowatts of power. The charger I went to was max rated at 350, so plenty of room to go there. It charged from 41% to 91% within the half hour that I was there. It cost me $11. Way cheaper than gas, especially with my M3 right now. So no real complaints there. The only thing is that obviously the charging network isn't going to be as known or as integrated as some other electric vehicles out there, i.e. Tesla, although Tesla is now, I believe, starting to let non-Tesla vehicles charge there for a hefty premium. But the charging infrastructure is there. You just kind of have to look for it a little bit more than you would with another one. The ride is pretty good. I've got it in the sport stiff mode right now, and it's riding pretty well. We're not over the most Michigan of roads right now, but it seems to be riding very well. I can throw it in comfort here real quick to get a little bit better idea. We have adaptive gas hydraulic struts in the front and air spring strut combos in the rear that are fully adaptive as well. And I believe the rear will also automatically self-level, so a lot of a good ride integration there as well. And this vehicle has a lot of integration between many different driving characteristics, and when you're driving it, you'll know what I'm talking about here. For instance, there is a heavy amount of talking between the motor control and the traction control and the steering of this vehicle. I took this thing out and I had my foot at a constant pedal application of about 50%, and as I decreased the steering angle, I could literally feel the vehicle giving me more and more power. As I increased the steering angle, it taking away power. Now that's obviously with their traction control system on, but that's just to demonstrate how integrated everything is here. They really do kind of talk with each other very well to give you like the most optimal and dynamic experience without making you veer off the road or spin all four tires. Another thing that's kind of funny is when you do a launch control, the amount of weight that's shifting to the back, you will hear the front wheels struggle for grip just a little bit of spinning there. I believe if they can get their weight distribution back to 50-50, you will eliminate that and it'll be even quicker to launch, very, very close to 3 seconds. But anyway, even now, this is a very, very fast vehicle just out of the box. So one final thing about this is we've got a autopilot level 2, 2.5 style driver assist system here. So we're going to do a quick highway segment to check the performance of that, and then I think we'll wrap it up. Again, overall impressions of this vehicle, it is exciting to drive, if not a bit detaching. In my M3, like I said, it was kind of the ultimate BMW. You are one with the vehicle and one with the road. With this, it's more like playing a video game. You're turning the wheel here, but you don't really know what the front wheels are doing, just because there's so many electronics between the steering wheel and the actual wheels itself, and just kind of the steering is usually the most attached part of a vehicle to the driver, and when you mute the steering, you pretty much deafen the driver from the overall vehicle experience as well. So, and that's something that BMW has taken a lot of criticism for in the past few years. But obviously, with an electric vehicle like this, you have to go with electric steering. You're not going to run a hydraulic pump just for a bit of extra steering feel. That's extremely inefficient. So we'll test the semi-autonomous system here, called assisted driving mode. Set it. So this is going to steer the vehicle for me. Pretty simple system. It's going to flash the steering wheel yellow because I don't have my hand on it, just to keep a driver attentiveness. So they're obviously not going with the Super Cruise route of a driver facing camera. We'll try a lane change here. So just one tap of the lane change, a half tap up of the stalk will complete your full lane change, and that was actually pretty quick. I was pretty impressed by that. Teslas will wait for at least a few seconds to make sure that everything's clear, run through all the variables and everything. But that lane change there was pretty quick. Let's see how it handles this off-ramp real quick, and it didn't like that. So off-ramps are still a point of concern for BMW's system here, but I'm sure that once you're on the highway and just kind of trundling along, it's going to be a much used system for the users of this car. So it seems pretty good. So that about wraps up my driving impressions of this vehicle. We're going to run back to the office here, and Cory and I will give a quick wrap up. Thanks.
All right, Nick, so thank you so much for bringing your BMW on the show and giving us some of your insight. It's always great at Munro when we have people who are dedicated or fans of a certain brand. I know we have you with your BMW, we have Kevin with all of his Fords, we have different people who have passions with different car brands. So thanks again, and to all the people watching out there, thank you so much for subscribing. That's what makes this possible. We're about ready to approach 300,000 or maybe even past that by the time this video comes out. The more subscribers we have, the more content like this that we can bring you. So thanks again, and appreciate you watching.